Welcome to HFY Sci-Fi Stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss new stories. Vidia's desolate expanse shimmered beneath a bloody sky, its twin dying suns casting a final, melancholic glow across a vast graveyard of shattered metal and brittle bone. Twisted husks of derelict war machines and abandoned corporate transports pierced the crimson earth like the skeletal remains of colossal, long-dead creatures, their decaying hulls catching the perpetual, oppressive twilight that had clung to this world for 3 grueling years. The very air tasted of bitter iron and crushing defeat, thick with the acrid, persistent smoke of fires that refused to fully extinguish. Kai pressed his cracked lips together, the gritty texture of the wasteland clinging to his teeth as he pushed forward. 4 days had passed since he'd forsaken his post. 4 agonizing days since he'd witnessed his comrades preparing to unleash fire upon a huddled camp of refugees, a choice that had irrevocably branded him a deserter. The phantom weight of his discarded sergeant's insignia still burned against his chest, a searing reminder, even though he'd ripped it free and buried it 50 kilometers back. His standard-issue corporate boots, now worn paper-thin and splitting at the seams, crunched loudly against something metallic. He paused, wiping a bead of sweat from his brow with the back of his hand, leaving a dark smear of mud across his forehead. The sun seemed to be setting again, or perhaps it was rising. Time itself had lost all meaning in this endless purgatory of red sand and shattered aspirations. The fuel canister slung across his shoulder was nearly depleted, its meager contents barely sufficient to sustain a cooking fire. Yet survival demanded desperate measures, and Kai had become adept at finding combustible materials in the most unlikely of places. He gathered jagged shards of hull plating, their edges sharp enough to draw blood, their surfaces still slick with the residue of long evaporated fuel. The metal would burn with a dirty, sooty flame, but it would burn. As he knelt to arrange his meager encampment, his fingers brushed against something smooth and circular, half buried in the shifting sand. He pulled it free, examining it in the fading light. It was a surlet, tarnished and pitted with the passage of countless years, its surface etched with intricate engravings worn almost smooth by the relentless wind and time. To his weary eyes, it appeared simply as a convenient stand, perfectly sized to prevent his battered cooking pot from sinking into the unstable ground. He positioned the tarnished crown carefully, balancing his pot upon its curved surface, and struck a spark. The flames erupted with hungry intensity, casting flickering shadows across the desolate landscape. Murky water, collected that morning from the condenser of a wrecked transport, began to bubble within the pot. It tasted of rust and profound despair, but it was wet, and in this barren world, that was more than enough. The fire crackled merrily, its tendrils of smoke curling skyward through the ancient metal of the turlet. Kai settled back on his haunches, a fleeting moment of peace washing over him. For the first time in days, he wasn't fleeing. For the first time in months, he wasn't running. Then, a memory struck him with the force of a physical blow. The refugee camp. The wide, pleading eyes of children pressed against the wire mesh. His squad leader's voice, sharp and cold. "Light them up, Sergeant. Orders are orders." The chilling weight of the trigger beneath his finger, the agonizing choice that had irrevocably fractured his existence. The vision was so potent, so real, that he almost missed the soft whisper of sand cascading down the dune behind him. Lyra crested the ridge like an avenging specter, her skin a luminous blue, radiating an ethereal glow that seemed to absorb the crimson light of the setting suns. A network of scars crisscrossed her arms and face, each a testament to countless battles, to her unyielding survival in a war that had devoured everything she had ever cherished. Her hair, as black as the deepest void between distant stars, whipped around her face in the evening wind. She had been tracking him for 2 days, following the faint impressions his boots left in the sand, the disturbed debris he'd passed, the subtle signs that only a seasoned hunter could decipher. She had expected to find a desperate, broken soul, another refugee fleeing the relentless grip of the corporate war machine. Instead, she found sacrilege. Her golden eyes, the color of molten metal, widened in stark horror as she witnessed his act. The ashborn crown, the sacred symbol of the Great Rebellion, the lost relic that had once graced the brows of the first freedom fighters who dared to defy corporate tyranny, was being used as a common campfire stand. Smoke rose through its ancient metal, a desecration of all it represented. Her deepest fear, the last ember of hope she had carried through 3 years of suffocating darkness, had been twisted into a vulgar mockery by this ignorant interloper. "No," she whispered, her voice snatched away by the wind, then louder, infused with a potent rage that had simmered for years. No! She surged down the dune, her feet finding purchase in the loose sand with the fluid grace of a born warrior. Her blade, forged from the crystallized bone of a colossal sandworm and honed to a molecular edge, sang as she drew it from its sheath, gleaming with an inner light, as if it remembered the spilled blood of tyrants. Kai sprang to his feet, his hand instinctively reaching for the combat knife at his belt, but he was too late. She was upon him, a whirlwind of liquid shadow, her blade halting just inches from his throat. The bone pressed close, almost grazing his throat. Its keen edge teased the air itself, a breath away from slicing his lifeblood. "You!" she ground out, her voice like rusted gears, like a dying machine's last gasp. "Do you even begin to grasp what you've unleashed?" Kai met her gaze, lost in the inferno of her eyes. He saw the tremor in her scarred hands, not of fear, but of barely restrained fury. His glance flickered to the pot, innocently bubbling, then back to her enraged features. "Just boiled water," he rasped, his voice thick from disuse. "Is that now punishable by death?" Her eyes widened further, burning with raw, consuming fury. She jabbed the trembling blade toward the fire, toward the crown supporting his pot. A crown that, as a sacred symbol of the engine roar, now seemed to cut through her words like a blade through silk. Suddenly, 3 corporate patrol speeders soared over the ridge, their lights stabbing the twilight like accusatory fingers. The lead vehicle bore the crimson mark of Administrator Valeria's personal guard. The unit Kai had fled. "Wonderful," Kai muttered, his stomach plummeting as recognition dawned. "Now we're both doomed." In the distance, a siren began its mournful wail, signaling approaching reinforcements. Lyra's head snapped toward the speeders, her warrior's instincts instantly assessing their position, weaponry, and trajectory. She turned back to Kai, her gaze holding a potent mixture of hatred, both for him and for the soldiers now bearing down on them. In that moment, she made a decision that curdled in her stomach. "The ancient prophecy," she choked out, each word bitter as poison. "He who retrieves the crown from the ashes shall become the new flame to burn down tyranny." Before Kai could react, her iron grip seized his arm, and she ripped the searing crown from the fire. The metal scalded her palms, but she didn't flinch as she rammed it onto his head. The ancient circlet burned into his scalp, eliciting a cry of agony and shock. "You sought to boil water upon it, outsider," she snarled, shoving him forward into the harsh glare of the advancing speeders. "Now strive to become the fire it promises. Rise, O great king of fools. Your subjects await." The corporate soldiers, their night vision blinded by their own lights, saw only 2 figures silhouetted against the fiery horizon. One, tall and menacing. The other, crowned with a red-hot circlet that pulsed with an unearthly glow. It was a scene of defiance they were not programmed to process. A tableau of ancient power and forgotten rebellion. Kai, his scalp ablaze, his mind reeling from this sudden twist of fate, grasped at an idea. He raised his hands, not in surrender, but in a theatrical, mocking gesture that somehow felt instinctively right. "My reign begins with your ashes," he bellowed, his voice raw with desperation and newfound resolve. Lyra seized the opportunity with a warrior's innate timing. She kicked a loose fuel canister into the fire, igniting an explosion that sent a towering plume of flame and sand erupting into the night. The blast momentarily blinded the patrol, their targeting systems overloaded by the surge of heat and light. "Move!" she barked, her voice cutting through the pandemonium. She grabbed Kai's arm, dragging him into the labyrinth of wreckage around them, disappearing into the maze of twisted metal and broken dreams. As the soldiers opened fire, their energy bolts hissed through the air where they had stood seconds before. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit grew louder. Boots crunching on sand, shouted commands, the whine of charging weapons. Their new kingdom was the skeleton of a fallen harvester, a colossal machine that had once devoured entire continents for corporate gain. Now, it lay half-buried in the sand, its hull cracked like an eggshell, its interior echoing with the whispers of wind through shattered viewports. Crawling through a maintenance shaft, the metal groaning ominously around them, Lyra finally spoke. Her voice, now steady, held the tremor of someone who had lost everything and found it again in the most improbable place. "The Ashbourne crown isn't a symbol of power," she said, the distant sounds of the search party underscoring her words. "It's a symbol of hope, and hope, outsider, is more dangerous than any weapon the corporations ever created." Kai gingerly touched the crown, feeling the burn it had inflicted. The metal was cooling, but it felt permanently melded to his skull. "I'm not a king," he said, his voice hollow. "I'm a deserter. I ran because I was ordered to fire on civilians. Children. I couldn't. I wouldn't." The confession hung in the air between them, a bridge neither had anticipated crossing. Lyra's expression softened, the hard lines in her face yielding for an instant. She too had lost family in such an incident, in a corporate restructuring. A blinding searchlight swept past their refuge, and they both stiffened. "The oppressor you fled," she breathed, her voice stripped of all past scorn, "is the very same one we confront. His name is Administrator Valerius. He reduced my home to this desolate ruin. He took my father. He extinguished my people." She paused, observing his features in the faint glow. "Yet you chose flight over the shot. That elevates you to kingship beyond his reach." The crunch of boots on metal sent a fresh wave of tension through them. The hunt was drawing nearer. Their fragile bond was forged from this mutual animosity, strengthened by the stark realization that they were both exiles from the same devastating ordeal. Over the subsequent days, as they engaged in a perilous game of evasion with the patrolling forces, word of the crowned king began to circulate through covert channels, whispered in shadowed corners of displaced encampments, disseminated through the encrypted networks of the burgeoning resistance. During a tempest that raged like a sentient entity, they sought shelter within a derelict transport with 3 other survivors. The wind shrieked around them, rendering conversation a trial. Yet the shared peril dissolved their reservations. Thine emerged first, an aged technician whose mechanical arm clicked and whirred as he toiled. He had been concealed within the debris for weeks, painstakingly reassembling a communication array from scavenged components. As he manipulated a piece, perspiration beading on his marked brow, he spoke without lifting his gaze. "Lost my arm during the Meridian Sector revolt," he stated, his voice nearly lost to the storm's fury. "Believed my fighting days were over. Then I heard tell of a king who wields cooking vessels as armaments." He glanced at Kai, a wry smile touching his lips. Felt compelled to witness it firsthand. Ma materialized like a phantom during the storm's brief respite, a young scout whose gaze held the vacant stare of one who had witnessed unspeakable horrors. She moved with the lithe grace of someone who had mastered survival in this barren expanse. Her familiarity with the clandestine routes through the debris fields proved invaluable. "The corporate patrols are employing new search methodologies," she reported, her voice strained with fatigue. "They are adapting. We must venture further into the desolate zones." She paused, her eyes fixed on Kai's countenance. "My younger brother would have been close to your age when the incident transpired. He always yearned to be a soldier." Her laughter was laced with bitterness. "I suppose he achieved his ambition." Doc arrived last, a somber medic who had dedicated 3 years to tending the injured with any provisions he could muster. He surveyed Kai's scorched scalp and commenced work immediately, his hands remarkably steady amidst the surrounding disarray. "Witnessed numerous crown burns in my tenure," he remarked dryly, applying a cooling balm to Kai's injuries, typically from individuals convinced of their destined ascendancy. He met Kai's gaze. "You are the first I've encountered who seems to genuinely resent bearing it. Lost my medical facility in the initial barrage. Have been mending rebels ever since. It feels appropriate to mend a king." They were a fractured, desperate assembly of souls, remnants of a conflict that had reduced their world to ashes. But as they gazed upon Kai, the crown seared to his scalp from the inferno of that first night, they perceived something absent from their lives for far too long. Hope. The profound veneration in their eyes sent a shiver down Kai's spine. He had been a sergeant, a subordinate, a minor component within an immense mechanism. Now they regarded him as their savior, their beacon in the encroaching darkness. And Lyra, bound by the ancient prophecy her people held sacred for generations, became his reluctant mentor and guardian. As the tempest began to recede, a distant alarm pierced the air. The corporate forces were re-engaging. Kai's approach to leadership defied all expectation. While enemy searchlights probed the perimeter of their hidden position, he articulated his plan, his voice a low, urgent cadence. "A direct confrontation is suicidal," he declared to the small contingent of insurgents preparing to relocate. "We lack the numbers, we lack the weaponry, and we lack the tactical training, but we possess an advantage they do not. We understand this wasteland, and we know their vulnerabilities." His strategies stemmed from a deserter's pragmatic cunning, not a soldier's traditional ethos. As they navigated the wreckage, he instructed them on orchestrating diversions, leveraging the treacherous terrain as an offensive tool, and disrupting corporate supply chains using components salvaged from the very machinery they once served. Where the previous insurgency had relied on frontal assaults and valorous last stands, Kai's methodology was subtle, precise, and utterly remorseless in its efficacy. Their inaugural triumph occurred during a perilous breakout from a corporate blockade. Capitalizing on his knowledge of corporate schedules and security protocols, Kai guided them to intercept a supply convoy destined for the regional barracks. They did not engage it directly. That would have been their undoing. Instead, as enemy units searched for them mere kilometers away, they infiltrated the water supply, incapacitating the garrison with a swift-acting, non-lethal sedative synthesized from local flora. 12 hours, Doc whispered, his hands trembling. They'll be asleep. The entire force lay dormant, soldiers lost in peaceful dreams while the rebels moved like phantoms through their defenses. They secured vital supplies, weapons, medicine, food, and crucially, intelligence on corporate activities across the sector. Fine's eyes widened as he connected to the garrison's communications. Look at this, he breathed, his prosthetic arm linking directly with the corporate network. Patrol routes, supply chains, personnel data. It was all accessible. Maya, her scout's intuition sharp even in victory, noticed something concerning. They're relocating someone significant, she stated, pointing to a coded transport manifest. A high-priority prisoner transfer, someone the Resistance was meant to be unaware of. Lyra observed Kai from the shadows, his quiet efficiency orchestrating the operation. This wasn't the heroic combat of prophecies, nor the clash of steel her people had long celebrated. It was strategic, effective, and by her upbringing, deeply dishonorable. Yet it yielded results. For the first time in years, her people had sustenance and functioning arms. As they prepared to depart the garrison, Kai found Lyra in the armory, gazing at corporate propaganda. The displays depicted smiling workers and prosperous lands, all elaborate falsehoods. Second thoughts? He inquired, checking his weapon. My father would have deemed this cowardice, she replied, her voice distant. He championed honorable engagement, face to face, blade to blade. He believed any other method was beneath us. And where did that conviction lead him? She turned, her golden eyes reflecting the stark emergency lights. Dead, along with everyone who shared his conviction. Their bond deepened amidst the trials of their small-scale conflict. During a perilous escape through crystalline canyons, pursued by corporate forces, they found themselves huddled together in a confined cave as energy bolts scorched the air outside. In that desperate closeness, with death lurking just beyond their refuge, their defenses crumbled. You dream of them, Lyra murmured, her voice a soft whisper. The children you spared. I hear you calling their names. Kai's hands remained steady as he reloaded his weapon, but his voice carried the weight of months of remorse. There was a girl, no older than 8, clutching a worn doll, just a scrap of fabric. When she saw us, she tried to hide it, as if we'd take even that small comfort. Did you know her name, Zara? Her mother kept repeating it, pleading, Zara, come here. Zara, stay close. He closed his eyes. I keep replaying that moment, wondering what would have happened if I'd fired. If I'd been the dutiful soldier they expected. Lyra's own confession followed as the sounds of pursuit intensified. My father perished defending a tattered banner, she said, her voice laced with old sorrow. He truly believed a symbol could deflect energy blasts, that courage and honor alone would suffice against corporate war machines. They are not enough, Kai responded softly, his eyes catching the faint glow of their emergency beacon. Symbols can't stop bullets, but they can inspire people to rise after the firing ceases. They offer a reason to fight beyond mere survival. He met her gaze, seeing past the warrior's facade to the person within. Your father wasn't wrong to believe in symbols, just misguided about which battles to engage. Outside, the pursuers had located them. The cave was bathed in the harsh glare of searchlights. Time to move, Lyra said, her tone altered, softer, more vulnerable. King of fools. Ghost of the past, he replied. And in that instant, it felt like absolution. Administrator Valius was no simpleton. He grasped that symbols held power, and the whisper of a new rebel leader, one who achieved victory without direct confrontation, striking from the shadows and vanishing like mist, was a threat demanding immediate suppression before it could ignite rebellion on other worlds. He deployed not an army, but a single operative. Colleen emerged from the corporate shuttle, a being of solidified shadow, his movements fluid and predatory. He had once been Lyra's mentor, the one who instilled in her the skills of combat, leadership, and the pursuit of a greater purpose. Now, he served as Valius's most dreaded enforcer, a phantom who had embraced the tyrant's chilling pragmatism to endure when all else had crumbled. Yet as he stood on the shuttle's ramp, surveying the desolate landscape of his former home, a flicker of emotion crossed his face. His hand instinctively moved to his chest, where his insignia once rested. He wore the emblem of the oppressors now, once a symbol of defiance. The gesture was swift, almost non-existent, yet unmistakable. He wasn't after capturing rebels. He hunted their resilience. Like an implacable storm scouring the wasteland, he ravaged vital water sources, defiled sanctuaries, and etched chilling declarations of defeat onto derelict spacecraft. However, with each calculated assault on their morale, the haunted flicker within his eyes burned brighter. He discovered children's drawings pinned to the walls of a decimated aid station, innocent depictions of families, dwellings, hope. Trembling, he reached for his explosives, momentarily paralyzed. Then, with cold precision, he set the charges and turned away, deaf to the earth-shattering roar behind him, the weight of which seemed to crush his very spirit. He anticipated their tactics because he'd instilled them in Lyra, who, in turn, had shared them. The rebellion began to erode under the relentless psychological pressure. Cells dissolved, survivors abandoning stations. "We confront him," Lyra declared during a fraught war council within a collapsed transport. The wind howled outside, foretelling a coming storm. "This is a personal trial. I trained under him. I recognize his every move, his weaknesses." "No," Kai countered, his voice firm as he scrutinized intelligence briefings by the candle's glow. "Engaging him on his terms is playing into his design. He anticipates your honorable conduct, your craving for a righteous confrontation. We must break his spirit, not his frame." Fane glanced from his comms console, his prosthetic limb twitching anxiously. "He's a legend. They say he's invincible. What if your gambit collapses?" "Then we adapt," Kai said, resolve in his voice. "Maya, your knowledge of the old capital's infrastructure?" Maya brightened. "Service tunnels, maintenance ducts, forgotten sections. The corporate legions blockaded most after the takeover. Their integrity is questionable. One mishap, and that entire sector could crumble." "Precisely," Kai replied, his grin as sharp as broken glass. "They lay their ambush amidst the ruins of the old capital, once home to millions, now a desolate expanse beneath a blood-red sky." Exploiting his expertise in demolitions and corporate structures, Kai primed a section of the city to collapse, not with a violent blast, but by weakening critical supports with precisely calibrated charges. While they toiled, Doc attended to the wounded from their previous clash. His hands moved deliberately, his gaze constantly drawn to the horizon, from where Kalen was undoubtedly approaching. "He will come alone," Doc voiced, his tone laced with concern. "It's not about egotism. It's about effectiveness. A single hunter can triumph where an army fails." "Then we'll teach him the price when the hunted become the hunters," Kai retorted, focused on the detonation sequence. Lyra appears to have served as bait, sending a challenge via old resistance channels, daring Kalen to an honorable duel in the city's central plaza. She invoked traditions, the old principles, a chance to settle their conflict with dignity. Everything she said was geared to appeal to the man he was, the mentor who had believed in something greater. Yet as she transmitted the challenge, her hands trembled, not from terror, but from the gravity of her plan. Kalen received the transmission aboard his hunter-killer, a predator honed for pursuit and elimination. He stood motionless before the viewport, observing the decaying city. Then, deliberately, he began donning his armor. As he sealed his helmet, his reflection revealed what might have been remorse. Upon arriving at the plaza, his corporate armor gleaming, weapons primed, he found Lyra waiting. She stood in the square's center, bone blade raised, stance perfect, just as he had taught. "You've mastered much," he said, his voice resonating. Behind the visor his gaze was concealed, but his voice carried what could have been pride. "But you have also learned to fight with dishonor. To strike from the shadows," he said. "I've learned to survive," she countered, her golden eyes fixed. "There is a distinction." As they circled, Kalen's movements were fluid, but mechanical. Kalen fought listlessly, his heart seemingly absent from the conflict. "Remember," he rasped, raising his energy blade. When I first taught you to wield a blade, you yearned to reshape the world with steel and courage alone. Lyra's voice remained steady, though her eyes betrayed her feelings. I remember, she replied, and what you taught me about adaptation. For a fleeting instant, Kaylin's guard faltered. Lyra saw not the corporate enforcer, but the man, her teacher, father figure, hero, who'd taught her honor was worth dying for. Then Kai detonated the charges. The plaza didn't explode, it simply vanished. The ground gave way, ancient foundations crumbling as the square plunged into the city's forgotten depths. Caught off guard, Kaylin tumbled into the abyss. His armor cushioned the fall, but his legs shattered, his pride broken. Trapped in a labyrinth of tunnels and forgotten chambers, his weapons useless against the tons of rubble, he felt utterly defeated. The dust settled. He removed his helmet, confronting a stranger in the polished surface. Older, harder, scarred by compromise and betrayal. Lyra and Kai descended, their path illuminated by the ghostly emergency lights, finding him slumped against a wall, his helmet discarded, his face etched with the weight of his decisions. You fight dishonorably, he sneered, his voice echoing, yet hollow, automatic. You've become our enemy. No, Lyra countered, her voice unwavering. I fight to win, for the living, not the dead. There's a difference. Kaylin truly saw her then, not an enemy, but the student he'd once proudly mentored. I failed you, he whispered. All of you. You survived, Lyra said gently, but became someone I don't recognize. They left him, alive yet vanquished, his legend shattered. As they ascended, Lyra looked back. In the dim light, Kaylin lifted his helmet, gazing into its reflective surface, searching for his former self. This was a victory, surpassing any death blow. News of Kaylin's downfall ignited the resistance networks. The invincible hunter had fallen, not to superior force, but superior strategy. Kaylin's defeat galvanized the rebellion. More cells awakened, more worlds defied corporate rule. Kai's reputation soared, his legend as the Ghost King, the unpredictable leader, growing. But victory exacted a toll. Their expanding network, connecting resistance cells across systems, strained Thane. His erratic behavior worsened, his prosthetic arms sparking, his self-talk intensifying during maintenance. The signals intensify, he murmured, his biological and mechanical hands working seamlessly. Too many voices, frequencies. I can't distinguish my thoughts from the networks. Maya grew withdrawn, her youthful joy replaced by the weariness of a soldier who'd witnessed too much. Her efficiency remained, but a chilling distance haunted her eyes. Found another mass grave, she reported flatly. A family executed. The children, my brother's age. She paused, her voice hardening. I marked the coordinates. Perhaps someday, a proper burial. Doc, burdened by unsaved lives, became increasingly philosophical. Treating the wounded, he reflected on war, sacrifice, and the price of victory. Each life saved, he stated, suturing a wound, is a victory. But each loss, a failure I bear forever. How many failures can one man endure before breaking? The final confrontation didn't occur on Vidia, but on Administrator Valerius's orbital platform, a monument to corporate excess, its gleaming halls filled with plundered art, observation decks commanding views of systems suffocating under his control. Using a captured corporate shuttle, recoded with Kaylin's security, Kai and Lyra led a small strike team to the Tyrant's command center. The harrowing approach demanded dodging relentless patrol ships, navigating intricate checkpoints, maintaining fragile cover as forces hunted them. Contacts on scanner! Maya's voice, taut with concentration, sliced through the comms. 3 interceptors, closing fast. Kai, strapping into the gunner's position, demanded, Can you shake them? Not shake, no, Maya retorted, hands blurring across controls. But I can confuse them. She plunged the shuttle into the station's treacherous debris field, weaving through shattered hulls with instinct. Interceptors, designed for open space, floundered, unable to match her audacious maneuvers. There, Thane's cybernetic eye flared, implants integrating with sensors. Docking Bay 7, Kaylin's codes active. They ghosted through the station's formidable defenses. Stolen uniforms and forged credentials carried them past checkpoints that would have repelled an army. But tension remained a raw hum. Every guard bypassed, every scanner cleared, felt like a hair's breadth from catastrophic discovery. Doc, disguised as a placid medical technician, moved with the quiet grace of one familiar with corporate labyrinths. Remember, he murmured, as they neared the command center. Own this space. Confidence is your most impenetrable shield. Valerius awaited them in his opulent private office, a solitary silhouette against a colossal viewport revealing Vidya's scarred surface far below. Kai halted, expectations shattered. Not the monster envisioned, but a profoundly tired man in a meticulously tailored suit, silvered hair framing eyes burdened by countless grim decisions. I knew you would come, Valerius stated, his gaze fixed on the ravaged planet. I was a rebel once, like you. I know how this story concludes. He turned, offering Kai a weary, almost gentle smile. It needn't end in bloodshed. Join me. Rule beside me. We can forge true order from this chaotic galaxy, not the sword's brutal decree, but the enduring harmony of law and structure. Valerius glided to his desk, fingers subtly working unseen. I've orchestrated this moment for years, he confessed, chillingly calm. The rebellion, resistance, your naive hope, all meticulously woven, leading to this singular truth. You imagine destroying my empire, but you're here to claim your inheritance. Kai's hand drifted to his sidearm, voice cutting. Your order is a gilded cage, Valerius. I've spent too long caged. Valerius offered a genuinely sad smile. Even cages, Kai, can be remarkably comfortable. I offer you everything. Boundless power, unparalleled position, the capacity to effect transformation, not just destruction. All that's required, acceptance that some sacrifices are regrettably essential for the greater good. The skirmish was brutally swift. Valerius, a manipulator not a combatant, posed no threat, his guards already subdued. But as Lyra moved to disarm him, the station shrieked with blaring alarms. Lockdown protocols activated, and chillingly calm electronic voice resonated. All personnel to emergency stations. He triggered something, Thane exclaimed, his implants frantically interfacing with hostile station systems. The facility's locking down. We're trapped. Valerius laughed, devoid of mirth. Did you truly believe it's so simple? I've dedicated years to this contingency. If I cannot govern, then no one shall. The station's self-destruct was active, with a horrifying twist. It would consume the entire star system. Orbital cities, vast industrial platforms, millions of lives inextricably linked to this infrastructure, all doomed. You're insane, Lyra gasped, her blade cold against his throat. Practical, Valerius countered, voice unnervingly calm. Only two choices, my order or the abyss of chaos. Refuse my vision, and you'll endure the unraveling pandemonium that follows. It was Doc, improbably, who unearthed their salvation, his medical expertise providing an unforeseen key to the technological nightmare. The life support systems, he declared, fingers blurring across panels. They're intricately woven into the self-destruct. If we can convince the station, there are still lives to protect. Kai, his gaze flicking to security forces breaching outer defenses, cut him off. Can you do it? 5 minutes, Doc retorted, characteristic calm consumed by raw, feverish concentration. Just keep them off my back. The battle for the command center was a furious, brutal sprint. Thane, his cybernetic enhancements fully engaged, became a conduit for the station's defenses, twisting its weapons against encroaching corporate guards. Maya, her scout's predatory instinct honed by confined spaces, moved like a phantom, systematically eliminating remaining enemies with chilling precision. Against the chilling backdrop of surgical precision, Lyra faced an impossible burden. Valerius, defeated yet defiant, held the ultimate threat, a dead man's switch, poised to unleash a virus, corrupting their hard-won freedom. Choose, little warrior, he hissed. Your king or your people. Lyra's blade trembled, her gaze meeting Kai's, finding acceptance in his eyes. He was ready to sacrifice himself. A flicker of hesitation, a whisper of prophecy. Then Fane's voice, crackling through the comms. I've got this. The technician's body convulsed, a symphony of sparks and sacrifice. His mind merged with the network, battling the virus, a brutal dance of deletion and defiance. The network remembers, his final words echoed, before his form vanished. His sacrifice became a shield, his final act of will a monument. Lyra, tears flowing, plunged her blade not into Valerius's heart, but into the controls that threatened millions. The self-destruct ceased. The tyrant's grand gesture crumbled. Through captured feeds, the rebellion witnessed their enemy's defeat. Justice beckoned. But Lyra saw Kai, The man who showed her survival and hope were choices. Deliberately, she lowered her blade. His fate will be judged by the people, she declared, her voice a beacon across the sector. We are liberators, not executioners. On the observation deck, Kai removed the Ashbourne crown, its weight a constant reminder of responsibility. The sounds of celebration, muted by grief, filled the corridors. In the comms center, Maya wept over Thion's body, his final message etched on the keyboard. Doc worked, his gaze drifting to the empty chair. He saved us, Maya whispered, his consciousness, protecting the connections. Liberated worlds flourished, their systems guided by a digital guardian angel. I think this belongs to you, Kai said, offering the crown. Lyra looked at his scars, the way he'd grown, the prophecy. It never said the flame had to be one person. She grasped the ancient crown and, with a decisive crack, split it in two. Forged by ages of trial and unrelenting strain, the ancient metal yielded along a deep fracture, splitting into two perfectly mirrored halves. With profound purpose, she extended one raw, gleaming shard to Kai, clasping the other firmly in her own hand. Now, we lead as one, she declared, a rare, unburdened smile gracing her lips, a genuine light he hadn't witnessed until this moment. Together, we will see this through. Beyond the viewport, a breathtaking spectacle unfolded across Viridia's scarred surface. Not the violent detonations of conflict, but brilliant supernovae of light, the jubilant fireworks of a liberated world. A joyous explosion of freedom erupted from the people who, after long years of oppression, finally possessed a future worth celebrating. The nascent council convened not upon gilded thrones, but around a simple, circular table at the heart of the old capital, now humming with the tireless efforts of freed corporate workers and reclaimed resources. There, nestled at its very center, lay the twin halves of the crown, not as emblems of absolute authority, but as poignant testaments to leadership as a shared endeavor, a powerful truth that the unwavering flame of rebellion burned fiercer when its strength was respectfully distributed. Thion's profound sacrifice echoed with purpose, his enduring spirit weaving through the vast communication networks he had forged. Now, subtly guided by some spectral echo of his consciousness, these conduits blossomed into an unparalleled system of true democracy. A vibrant chorus of voices could finally resonate, their collective decisions forged not by rigid decree, but by heartening consensus. Operators often whispered of hearing his spectral voice, a comforting presence amidst the static between vital transmissions, eternally watching over the very connections he had died to safeguard. Maya, now the steadfast guardian of collective memory, meticulously established sacred archives where the profound stories of the lost could be tenderly preserved, where the hallowed names of the dead could be eternally honored. For Thane, she crafted a singularly poignant memorial, his prosthetic arm reverently displayed beside the final prophetic message he had transmitted. The future is connected. Her intimate knowledge of the clandestine pathways expanded into an expansive mapping initiative, ensuring that these vital havens of liberty would remain eternally etched, never again consigned to the shadows of oblivion. Doc's medical centers transformed into profound sanctuaries of healing, tending not only to ravaged bodies, but to shattered spirits. He pioneered groundbreaking therapies for the deep psychological wounds of prolonged conflict, gently guiding both weary rebels and former corporate soldiers back toward the shared embrace of humanity. In his quiet office, a small, reverent shrine to Thion stood, a simple, cherished photograph capturing the technician's radiant smile, his prosthetic arm glinting brightly in the soft light. The arduous war was far from concluded. Vast sectors still languished under the iron fist of corporate dominion. Countless other worlds continued their silent cries for urgent liberation. Yet for the first time in a generation, the resilient people of Viridia and its neighboring systems possessed something far more tangible than mere hope. They held a true future. They were guided by leaders who profoundly understood that the most enduring victories were not forged upon brutal battlefields, but nurtured within the unyielding hearts of those who bravely chose to persist, even when the crushing odds seemed insurmountable. Ultimately, the humble crown, once a mere makeshift campfire stand, had transcended its origins, evolving into a potent, living symbol. It whispered the profound truth that even the most unassuming individuals could ascend to heroically confront the monumental trials of their era, and that, sometimes, the brightest, most enduring flames of change are ignited not by grandiose declarations, but by the quiet, unwavering resolve to do what is morally right, even when that choice demands an unbearable, ultimate sacrifice. And amidst the graceful ruins of the old capital, where the joyous echoes of children's laughter now filled sunlit streets, life blossomed anew with countless small, profound miracles. A young girl, barely 8 seasons old, sat bathed in the warm sunlight, cradling her cherished homemade doll, a simple scrap of fabric brought to life with button eyes and yarn for hair. As her innocent play unfolded, her small fingers discovered a fragment of twisted metal in the rubble, tarnished by time, yet still bearing faint, intricate traces of ancient engravings. Unaware of its epic history, she tenderly placed the shard upon her doll's head, like a miniature shining crown, then resumed her game, softly humming a timeless lullaby her grandmother had whispered to her, a melody of flames that forever burn and hope that endlessly returns. The humble metal gleamed with a quiet luminescence in the gentle sunlight, and somewhere within the boundless living network that interconnected all the newly liberated worlds, a faint, ethereal smile graced the face of a ghost in the machine.